People often imagine that billionaires are a creation of the modern world, born from stock markets, technology, global trade, and massive corporations. But the truth is far more surprising. More than 2,000 years ago, long before Wall Street, before banks, before the word billionaire even existed, there were men who controlled amounts of wealth so enormous that if converted to today's value, they would easily pass the billion-dollar mark. And what is even more shocking is that they did not build their power only through armies, gold mines, or political titles. They used something far more subtle and far more dangerous: mind tricks. They understood human psychology on a level that let them control kings, influence empires, and make entire populations move in ways that suited their interests. Their real power was not in their treasure rooms, but in their ability to shape how people thought, feared, obeyed, and admired them. This is the hidden story of how the world's first billionaires used psychological strategies to rise so high that even ancient rulers were terrified of them. The earliest example comes from ancient Lydia, where King Croesus became one of the richest men on earth through his gold-rich rivers. But what truly made him powerful was not just his wealth, but how he made people think about his wealth. Croesus understood the psychology of appearance. He became famous for displaying his riches in ways that were impossible to ignore. When visitors from Greece walked into his palace, Croesus would meet them surrounded by mountains of gold objects, extravagant statues, and luxurious gifts. He knew that people respected what they could see, what overwhelmed their eyes, what shocked their imagination. His wealth display was a carefully crafted psychological trap that made others assume he was unbeatable, blessed by the gods, and destined to win every battle. This illusion of invincibility made neighboring states treat him with caution, fear, and even worship. In reality, his armies were strong but not unstoppable. But his mind trick made rivals doubt themselves before a war even began. In ancient Rome, one of the earliest billionaire equivalent figures was Marcus Crassus, a man who built a fortune that would be worth billions today. Crassus understood a different psychological trick: the power of timing and opportunity. During Rome's constant fires, when panic filled the streets and buildings burned uncontrollably, Crassus would arrive with his private team of firefighters. But he did not offer help out of kindness. He would negotiate with the terrified property owner, offering to buy their burning building at a very low price. The owner, seeing flames swallow everything, would accept the deal. Only after acquiring the property would Crassus signal his men to extinguish the fire. He used the mind trick of desperation, waiting for the exact moment when fear erased rational thinking. People made decisions they would never make in normal conditions, and Crassus became richer with every disaster. The rumor of his methods spread so widely that people even believed he secretly started fires himself, because the panic-driven sales made him unstoppable. Another psychological strategy Crassus used was the manipulation of public perception. Unlike other wealthy Romans, he did not hide his power. He walked among common people, lending small amounts of money to influential families and ensuring they owed him favors. This made him appear generous while secretly creating a network of debt, loyalty, and dependence. He convinced Rome that he was a protector of the people, even though he was slowly controlling every decision made in the city. He used a soft psychological trap: make people feel helped, make them feel safe, and they will follow you forever. In Egypt, hundreds of years before Rome rose to power, the priesthood of Amun at Thebes became one of the richest institutions in the ancient world. These priests used the mind trick of divine legitimacy. Their wealth came not from trade or business, but from convincing the Egyptian population that the gods themselves spoke through them. If a priest said that a certain land or treasure belonged to the god, no king or general would dare refuse. Over generations, this religious psychology allowed them to accumulate enormous wealth: gold, land, grain, livestock, and even their own armies. Pharaohs ruled Egypt politically, but the priests ruled mentally. They controlled fear, hope, and fate. By shaping belief, they shaped wealth. This is the purest example of how ancient billionaires did not always sit on thrones. They sat inside people's minds. Another powerful billionaire-level figure was Qin Hui, a wealthy merchant during China's Warring States period. He used the psychological trick of information control. In a world where communication was slow and rumors spread like wildfire, Qin Hui invested in networks of messengers and informants. He always knew which regions were about to go to war, which crops were failing, which leaders were falling out of favor, and which cities needed supplies. He then used this knowledge to buy goods when they were cheap and sell when panic made their value rise. He understood that information is the most powerful form of currency, and the mind trick was simple. If he knew what others did not, he could manipulate markets without anyone realizing it. He became so influential that even generals sought his advice before making military plans, unknowingly giving him even more information to exploit. In India's Mauryan Empire, gigantic fortunes were controlled by merchants who mastered the psychology of trust. Trade routes were dangerous, filled with bandits, storms, and political instability. Most people avoided long-distance trade because of fear. But these early billionaires created a new system: reliable branding, safe caravans, and networks of protection. They built reputations so strong that when a merchant stamped their symbol on a product, people trusted it blindly. That trust allowed them to raise prices, collect loyalty, and dominate routes. They did not bully people, they influenced their minds through reputation. Trust became a tool, and reputation became a weapon. Another master of psychological wealth building was Mansa Musa of the Mali Empire, one of the richest humans in history. His most famous mind trick was generosity. When he traveled to Mecca, he handed out so much gold that people believed he lived in a kingdom overflowing with riches. His gift-giving was so overwhelming that cities he visited experienced temporary inflation. But this generosity was not random kindness, it was strategic. By appearing unbelievably rich, Musa made Mali a legendary land in the minds of traders, scholars, and rulers across Africa and the Middle East. This mental image attracted caravans, trade routes, alliances, and skilled workers. His wealth grew not just from gold mines, but from the psychological magnet he created. The belief that Mali was the land of endless opportunity. It was a mind trick based on abundance. Even ancient pirate kings and sea traders used psychological warfare to appear more powerful than they were. Some Phoenician merchant families, the earliest mega-rich trading dynasties, learned how to use secrecy as a psychological tactic. They guarded the locations of valuable mines, islands, and trade routes with extreme secrecy. They intentionally spread rumors of monsters, curses, and dangerous storms in areas that contained valuable resources. These stories scared off competitors and kept markets under their control. They controlled information, fear, and risk perception. Their wealth grew not from brute strength, but from shaping what others believed about the world. What all these early billionaires understood was a truth that remains powerful even today. Money itself is not the real source of influence. The true power comes from controlling how people think about money, fear, trust, risk, reputation, and authority. Some used fear to force opportunities, others used hope to attract followers. Some wielded secrecy like a weapon, while others crafted public images so powerful that no one dared challenge them. They manipulated belief systems, emotional reactions, and social expectations. They built networks of loyalty. They made themselves look untouchable, unstoppable, or sacred. And in doing so, they quietly wrote the first rulebook of psychological wealth, one that modern billionaires still follow. In the end, the story of the world's first billionaires is not just about riches. It is about understanding human nature at its core. These ancient masters discovered that if you can control how people feel, you can control how they act. If you influence the mind, you dominate the world. Their gold has turned to dust, their kingdoms are long gone, but their secrets still live today, hidden inside the strategies of modern power. The only difference is that thousands of years ago, the mind games were even more raw, more daring, and more openly tied to survival. And that is why the first billionaires of history remained powerful for generations. Not because of treasure, but because they mastered the oldest form of wealth, the human mind.